Greetings gamers, my name is Anto, welcome to the stream, and this evening we're going to be doing something super exciting. We're going to be diving into a new campaign setting in my world of Ishtar and starting from the ground up and building out a whole new setting like we've done in the past with Ashk and the Jewel Cities of Talabar. We're going to be doing that with an entirely new setting. So as we go through this, anytime that you want to get involved, anytime you have suggestions, have questions, anything like that, I want you to throw it down into the chat, because this whole process is way more fun when it's collaborative and we're back and forth and like bouncing ideas off each other. So I'm just going to double check that all of the sounds are working. Yes, they are. So while we wait for people to trickle in from notifications and things, go ahead, say hello in the chat while I push all of the buttons in the background, return on my music because I hear different music to you, and make sure that it's not so loud that I can't hear myself think. That's better. And get everything set up. Before we dive into things proper this evening, I'm going to make sure that I do all of my button pressing things. The stream audio might be too low because my headset thing microphone is in a different place. 2 seconds. Is that better? I don't know whether the mute button actually worked then, so you might have heard horrible screeching sounds, but I moved it so it's not, tried to move it so it's not so in my face all the time. But these microphones don't enjoy not being in your face, but at least that's better. Cool. Oh, the mute worked. Cool. Well, the button didn't tell me that it worked, but I'm glad that it did. So this evening, before we dive into all of the things, I'm going to do my shilling up top because I always forget to do it, and then I'm always rushing to do it at the end. So before we dive into things proper, I'm going to press the buttons that I need to press here on my stream deck so you can see the things that need to be seen. So the first thing that I want to shout out, we still have like 3 days left for my class cheat sheets for D&D 2024 5.5e. That has still got like 3 days left. So if you are looking for a set of cheat sheets to help make learning and playing the latest edition of D&D easier, go ahead and check the Kickstarter out. We're like less than $100 away from our last stretch goal, which is going to be for like a super beginner friendly adventure. So that's going to be really fun. That's my main thing to shill this evening. The rest of the evening is just going to be good world building stuff. Also no spoilers, so I'll be lurking in silence. There will be full spoilers here. This is going to be a full spoiler stream, so if you don't want spoilers, you're going to have to just bow out, I'm afraid. But it might be fine. We are real early in kind of development of this, so I don't even know how much of this stuff is gonna make it through kind of to the players in the end. So let us dive into this. Let me press my buttons and let's get started. Cool. So this evening we're going to be working on a new campaign setting. So for years now, I have been asked by friends who aren't in my long-term ongoing campaign whether they can play D&D with us, and it's gotten to the point where I'm always like, yeah, I'd love to run for you, but we've got our own thing going on. And for a while I've been kind of mulling the idea of setting up a West Marches style thing where I run less scheduled and structured and less like narrative heavy campaigns that are more drop in, drop out for a larger group of people, because there's a larger group of people that want to play in the game than could possibly be sustained. And within the last like 3 weeks, I've had like 5 or 6 separate people be like, "We run D&D for me." So the time has come. I really do need to start putting this together, and I think the biggest reason that I haven't done this up until now is because I didn't have a region to set this West Marches style campaign in, and especially for this kind of gameplay, I know I want to have a really good handle on the setting and the environment that the players are going to be in before I start running for them, so that I have to do less brain work in the moment-to-moment gameplay. The more I know about the world before the sessions start, the easier it is for me to improv. The more that I just know, the less that I have to scramble in the moment, the more I can react to the players and they can do weird and wacky stuff and it just not be a problem. So over the next however many weeks and months this takes, through streams and maybe some videos and some members only content, we're going to be building up a brand new campaign setting within my existing world of Ishtar, and that is going to be this little, not so little, but this island nation down in the southwest of Talavar. So Talavar is one of the continents of my world, one of the continents of the known world of Ishtar, and there's a little island, or not so little island, off the southwest coast that is a prime spot for this style of campaign. I wanted an island nation because I want it to be kind of separate from the rest of the world, so that if for any reason we did decide that this was going to be taking place in the same kind of time period as existing games, there's less chance of them overlapping. And I also wanted something that was much more geographically contained. So you see the edges of the world, as it were, and the players are less likely to be like, right, we're just going to go off into the unknown, versus like, what's on the other side of this map boundary, because I know that there is land, so can I just walk over there? And then in terms of its positioning, I knew I didn't want an Arctic region or a particularly cold environment, which ruled out both Qatar and Sunscar, as well as the huge continent of Arsena up north. And I also didn't want to run a campaign in Senegal, which is like the feudal Japan, kind of feudal East Asia analog of the world. That isn't what I want for the vibe for this. I want something much more distinctly Fantasyland. So then we're looking at islands around here, and this particular one off the coast of Talavar stuck out to me more than anything else. JNat says, island as a start is nice if the players do exhaust any interesting possibilities. You can always give them a quest to build a ship and expand the adventure to nearby archipelagos. Exactly. Like, islands, keeping things nice and contained as a starting point. That's the goal. Lexaurus says, hi, watching while I prep for Strahd game tomorrow. They're going to his engagement dinner. Love that. If I was going to be running another narrative campaign and not like West Marches style, Strahd is what I would be running. I do want to run a Strahd game in the future at some point. In terms of island size, we're looking pretty large. Like, I keep referring to it as little because I'm referencing it in context of the continent of Talavar, but in terms of actual size, it's like 400 miles long. So if we jump into this here, the current working name that I have for this is Sunscar. So I spent a little time yesterday and today kind of working out high level vibes for what I want from this, and making a little header banner thing, just to give me a vibe of what I want this to be, and settled on Sunscar, the Radiant Crown, for like most of yesterday, well, all of yesterday and most of today, wasn't super sure what the Radiant Crown was going to be, but I've got some ideas on that now. And if we jump into the map here, this is a super work in progress map. Like, this is like 12 hours old. But if we go ahead and set up our measurement tool, because Chainat is right, that is a great time to set up our distances. If we zoom in here, I have put the scale bar in and do that. That sets up 25 miles. And then we can measure kind of how long. Measurement? Yeah. So it's like, 400-ish miles long ways, which is around what I wanted. Wildwolf says, first time seeing you with your hair down, almost didn't know you. That happens a lot, because whenever I'm filming regular channel videos, I like to keep it up for continuity's sake, because I play with it a lot. And otherwise, in between shots, it's just like whipping around. So it's easier to keep it up, but occasionally during the streams it comes down. So this is our super work in progress version of the map that is 400 freedom units or 670 kilometers. And you can see that I've roughed in a really general shape. I started with the shape of the world, from the world. If we go back to this world map, I started by tracing in this shape. And very quickly I was like, this is giving me like Japan vibes in the terms of its shape and then the kind of islands that stick off it. I couldn't see past kind of mainland, the main island of Japan. So I started peeling and pulling at the coastline to make something that didn't scream Japan when I looked at it. So I'll update the world map eventually once this is finished. But the coastlines aren't finished. Nothing is anywhere close to being set in stone here. But once I'd figured out kind of a rough shape, then I went in with the brush tool and kind of painted in rough biomes to give me an idea of here is where the different landscapes are going to be within this environment. So over here on the east of the island, I've got a note for the Sunscar forests and plains, and I've put a little note there in brackets saying levels 1 to 5, because again, this is going to be a kind of West Marches style thing. So the idea is that the players will start in a place of safety and venture out. They will head west. As it happens, they will literally head west. That is a coincidence born about by there only being one point of reference for something that existed here before I started this process, and that was there is a Terras seal. So there is a god in my world called Terras the Devourer who is imprisoned beneath the earth, and there are 12 seals that keep this god imprisoned. One of those seals exists on this map, and these are sites of incredibly powerful dark magic, hence why there's kind of like a darkened area around it on the map. So I knew that I wanted the players to start far away from this, and so they will venture west in true West Marches style. So we start off in a kind of forest plain biome for our levels 1 to 5, and as we move west we get kind of mountainous regions, get some frozen landscapes, some snow, and then down from the mountains we go through kind of a transitionary biome as the snow melts, and then into a desert, because a lot of the vibes I have in my head of this speak to deserts and badlands and wastelands. And then we move into swamps and marshes and this deadlands area around the Terras seal. So that's what I have in mind in terms of biomes. Again, these ideas have not existed for 24 hours at this point, but it gives us a progression, because the whole point of West Marches is being able to go out and venture. So Wildwolf says, by the way, small update for you, I switched from Obsidian to Legend Keeper. While there are some tools I miss from Obsidian, like the board tools, Legend Keeper is way better for writing. I'm biased because Legend Keeper is what I have been using for as long as it has existed, but I have tried so many tools as an alternative to Legend Keeper, and I've tried to make videos on so many of them because for like balance, but every time I try and make one, I'm like, I get very quickly into the process and I'm like, I already know that I don't like this as much, and it feels disingenuous for me to go through this process and like be like, here's all this stuff that I'm doing in this piece of software that I already know that I don't like. But Legend Keeper does have board tools. If I jump into one of them that I use my DM screen for. So my DM screen is one of the board tools. You can link pages to it as big clickable buttons, but then you can also add sticky notes, which you can write on and type on. And you can also add arrows and pointers and things. If I go back to the Jewel Cities, we can go into the political map, which is a board tool. These are each of the nations of the Jewel Cities as a clickable button, which takes you to the page for the nation. But then I've got all the arrows setting out their relationships, and I've added text and stuff. So the board tools are relatively robust. They're not my most used things for the kind of mind mapping board purposes. I mainly use it as the GM screen. That's my main use of the boards tool, and I use this every single week because I find it easier to reference like my most commonly needed rules in this format than to go to like D&D Beyond and look them up. Desert Behind the Mountain makes sense, but I feel like going from dry desert to damp swamp is quite a sharp transition. So the kind of deadlands will be our transitionary period. So the desert will go from desert to deadlands to swamp, and rather than it being butted straight up. This was like literally 2 minutes worth of painting in with the paintbrush earlier in Incarnate. And all of this is going to change as working textures and place rivers and mountains and all of that kind of stuff. Welcome in, Agile Monk. How are we? So, the concept behind this place, behind Sunscar, I started out with the name more than anything. So if we go back to the Ishtar World page and go to my place names tab. So I have a tab of place names that anytime I get a cool name idea, I put it in this tab and over time add it to the world. And you can see that I've added some of these to the world already. Like Silea is a nation in Talabar. Arsena is the frozen continent in the north. Thynax or Thynax or something like that. This eventually became the Ensouled Conclave to the east of Valen. Kvatch took me months to realize that that was actually a place in Oblivion, because it had been so long since I played, and then they dropped the remaster and I was like, oh yeah, I can't use Kvatch. But as I go through and have kind of cool ideas for names, they all go in this list. And then when I have an idea like this and I'm like, right, I need a new location, this is the first place I come and I'm like, are there any names that speak to me? And so yesterday when I was like, right, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to make this West Marches style place. How are we going to do this? Came into this page and the one that spoke to me was Sunscar, because I was like, that has the kind of fantasy but vaguely grimdark vibes that West Marches gives me, because West Marches has, to me, West Marches has an undercurrent of the grimdark, or an undercurrent of the sort of old school, that OSR vibe, that danger lurking behind it. And Sunscar is a distinctly kind of sword and sorcery style name. So that's how we ended up with Sunscar. And then from there, it was a case of thinking about, I know that this specifically is something I am going to have to pitch to people. So Miss Lexi says OSR question mark. So that is like the old school Renaissance. So the movement of taking old school D&D rules or vibes, particularly sort of first and second edition D&D, and bringing them into the modern day. So things like Shadow Dark, old school essentials, Dungeon Crawl classics. There's a bunch of games that have a lot of sensibilities of the style of play that was really common in first and second edition D&D, and bring them into the modern age. And it's kind of one of the more popular alternative styles of playing D&D-esque RPGs. To give it a big vague description. But when I think of West Marches, that's where my brain goes. That everything is dangerous, exploration is dangerous, magic is unknowable. Anytime that you leave the safety of the town, a gribbly monster might tear you apart. You are there for the loot and the experience of the unknown versus like the narrative side of it. It's more, if you think of it in terms of the kind of typical three pillars of play: your combat, your exploration, and your social. If we substitute social for narrative, then it's much more exploration and combat focused than it is narrative focused. That's not to say that you can't have social and there can't be a narrative, but it more means that that narrative comes through the exploration and the combat rather than capital P plot. So I knew that I wanted something that spoke to kind of those sensibilities, which is what led to kind of developing this title card, because I wanted to kind of square away in my brain a kind of hook and a visual language and something to be like, right, I need a starting point. I've got the name Sunscar from my name list, cool, but I need something to give me a direction now to go down. And settled on the Radiant Crown, because I was like, that's just a cool subtitle. It's very pulpy, it's very sword and sorcery. It's the kind of thing that you'd expect in like a Conan adventure. And spent a little time, grabbed some stock art from Pixabay and put together this little banner, and I was like, right, okay, this is going to be my guiding star. Like, this is the vibe that we're going for. And initially I kind of went down one route where I was trying to reuse ideas and content from previous campaigns and tie it more deeply into my world with more recent lore. So in my current campaign, or like the last campaign, we had a TPK and the players were TPK'd by a being that wanted to achieve godhood, and there was a whole plot thread that kind of dangled and went unanswered with that, with a being called a Cash, the golden god, who wanted to establish themselves as a deity. And initially I thought this is the perfect time to go down that route and to have Sunscar be a Cash's realm and have it be the realm of the golden god. And I went pretty far down the rabbit hole of following that before realizing that actually that is the wrong path to take. Welcome, Kath. How are we? So as I was following this path of thinking, right, the way that I'm going to develop this is it's going to be Akash the Golden God, and this land is going to be his dominion. I kept coming across questions that I was like, the players are going to ask these questions. I'm going to have answers to them. And the answers that I have seem very convoluted, or either convoluted or require such an amount of buy-in or pre-existing knowledge that very quickly I was like, this is getting away from me. And the amount of kind of filling in that I would have to do with players before they ever started exploring in this world was just getting too much. It was becoming impossible to be like, right, you can just make a normal D&D character and start it in this world without giving them 100 different explainers. So that signaled to me that this was a bad idea and that I should take it back and go back to the drawing board, which is absolutely fine. That is just how kind of development goes sometimes. Sometimes you have an idea that you think, oh, this is a perfect chance to marry these two ideas, and it'll feel like it was always meant to be, and then you go down that path and actually no, it was never meant to be, and that is fine. You got to kill your darlings and it's no problem. So going back to the drawing board, I started thinking again of, from a kind of functional utility perspective, what do I want to achieve with this campaign? So if I'm running it West Marches style, the goal is to gather a pretty decently sized group of people who can organize themselves and go out adventuring in the world. So I need a lot of adventure locations. Okay, why would there be a lot of adventure locations in this region? And I started listing down ideas for why there would be a particularly large amount of adventure locations here. Why are we setting it here instead of somewhere else? And eventually it came to me that I was like, I can kind of have my cake and eat it too. I can get some joy as the game master and as the world builder out of this, while still satisfying what I need from the mechanics of a West Marches style game, by having Sunscar be a place where one of the Akmiri skyships came crashing to Earth. So in the setting of Ishtar, in my world, like 1500 years ago, there was a race of people called the Akmiri. They were the most powerful empire on the planet. They were the height of magic and technology. And in the blink of an eye, they were destroyed. No one knows why. Just all of a sudden, their bodies were destroyed and the sky cities that they lived in came crashing to Earth. And my players in my current campaign have interacted with elements of Akmiri lore over the course of the last decade, and it's been a lot of fun. But the only interaction we've had with the Sky Cities has been one dungeon delve, which ended in a TPK, and then one plot thread relating to a piece of Sky City that just kept getting further and further away, and they never quite managed to get to it. So I thought that this would be a great chance to have a region rich in pieces of one of these Sky Cities. Maybe one of the largest came crashing down over this island, and the reason why it's full of magical artifacts and reasons to go exploring and full of these weird and wacky dungeons is because it's pieces of this ancient technology, ancient Sky Cities jetting from the Earth. And as soon as I put those two pieces together, things started to really snowball in like visualizing what I wanted the tone and vibe for the whole campaign to be. Jonathan says, hello, Anto. I was wondering what VTT you use to run most of your games. So I use Foundry VTT predominantly. I have used Fantasy Grounds in the past to run, I want to say, a campaign and a half. I ran a whole Pathfinder campaign in Fantasy Grounds and some 5th edition in Fantasy Grounds. But now I almost exclusively use Foundry. I have also used some Roll20 in the past before, but Foundry is my personal go-to because it's what I'm most familiar with, and because of its like widespread mod capabilities. But I mainly use it for like the mechanical elements of play, so character sheets, putting the map in front of the players, and then that interaction, rather than doing any world building stuff. All of the world building stuff and all of the map making stuff I do outside of Foundry. Foundry is just what I use to run the game on the night, so to speak. So once I figured out the kind of reason why Sunscar was going to be so kind of saturated with places to explore was that this skyship had crashed. Then I started thinking, well, what can that do in terms of tone and vibe for the campaign as a whole? So I know that there's a big section of desert in the middle of the map, but I have previously run a campaign that was set entirely in a desert, and that desert was suffering from an incursion, like an apocalypse brought about by demons. I've also got a desert in the Jewel Cities of Talabar that's like an irradiated magical wasteland, and I don't want to step on the toes of those, but I do kind of want a mildly kind of apocalyptic vibe to this, because I think that it plays well into the West Marches style, into the OSR. Like, a lot of the post-apocalypse themes work really well. So what I've settled on is the kind of stage of post-apocalypse that you get in things, in franchises like Horizon, in franchises like The Last of Us, those stories where you're like a long time removed now from the actual event itself. Nature has begun reclaiming the infrastructure, and you are exploring in a world that has largely been reclaimed and going through now this dangerous landscape where you see the echoes of an old world, and that kind of echoes of an old world has become a key pillar of what I want to do within this West Marches style game. My channel bank says, Anto, I made sure to support your Kickstarter. Thank you very much. It is much appreciated. For anyone that didn't see my little rambly spiel right at the start, I have a Kickstarter ongoing right now for class cheat sheets to help make learning and playing D&D 5.5 as easy as possible. Still got like 3 days before it ends. It ends on Thursday, I think it is. And we're like less than $100 away from the final stretch goal. So I'll put the link into the chat. Make sure to check it out. So the vibe that we're going for in this West Marches style campaign is going to be very Horizon Zero Dawn. That's, if I had to distill it to one piece of media, it would be Horizon, in that you are in their early levels. There will be a lush, verdant region that is a bunch of these towering structures that were once Akmiri, pieces of the fallen Sky City, crashed to Earth. When it crashed to Earth, it destroyed Sunscar, basically. That's why it's Sunscar, because the sky fell, scarred the Earth. Over the hundreds of years since, kind of nature has reclaimed, so the adventurers can go and they'll be able to explore through these skyscrapers of pieces of crashed Sky City, and among those there will be lost artifacts, there'll be hidden dungeons and things that they need to unlock and discover, but there's also hundreds of years of magic from this Sky City that has seeped into the earth and into the surround. So there are all kinds of gribbly monsters throughout the island that make the island their home. Which makes it kind of the perfect staging ground for that West Marches style. Willing to make it to that final stretch goal. I backed it so fast. Hell yeah. I'm really excited for that final stretch goal, the super beginner friendly short adventure. It'll be a lot of fun. Typo on my phone, of course I meant Anto. Yeah, happens all the time. It's either Anti or Anton that people that get the typo. I just My brain autocorrects it just by rote. It's fine. So that is the general kind of top level vibe for Sunscar, the Radiant Crown. It's a frontier realm that was decimated during the Acmera apocalypse when one of the sky cities broke up above it and crash landed into this island like thousands of meteors. And then centuries later, we're going to find that the settlers have returned to claim the island's riches, but the land is wild, the ruins are dangerous, and there's strange creatures roaming the scarred wilderness. Then the Radiant Crown itself is a legend, because I think any good West Marches style campaign needs a juicy legend. So this is a legend that might be the Sky City itself. There could be some larger fragment that exists out there that is the Radiant Crown, or it could be a legendary artifact that exists out there. But the Radiant Crown is a thing, it's an item, it's a thing that people believe exists, and it's part of the reason why the frontiers people and the settlers have come here, and it's part of why the player characters will have come here, because they have heard the rumors of the Radiant Crown, and it's all up for the taking. Someone is going to find it and figure out what it is, and it could be you. So that's the central premise behind what we have at the moment. And a lot of what we'll be doing on stream is figuring out where things are, what things are, and like what the whole vibe is. That's the wrong tab. There we go. Neat how Legend Keeper lets you put images in there with all the texts. Yeah, it's useful to be able to like have a banner there to keep the framing of what is the vibe for this thing. What is the vibe for this thing? And I have immediately started making a like campaign document, like a fancy looking campaign document. Let me see whether I can bring it up and get this working and whether it will work. So give me 2 seconds to work out the technology while we load these things up, and then go into that, and then go into that, and change this to that, and then that, and change this to publisher? No, designer. There we go. Ha, look at that. It's almost like I know what I'm doing. So I have already started working on an affinity document for this, because I know that eventually I might want to send it to the players, but I know I'm going to have an easier time of things if I have my own lore document in which to keep all of my notes. So a lot of what I have done in the last 24 hours is kind of vibe-based, kind of figuring out the design work for this. So starting from a point of like vague Shadow Dark styling, trying to figure out whether I want the big, bold Shadow Dark headings or like something more traditional. Still not 100% sure on that. And then like figuring out kind of trade dress and page styling and putting in the cover. Like there's no content that exists there, but getting that started now means that as we go through this process, I can start building out this document. It can become a living document that can have tables and all that kind of stuff in it from the jump, and it makes it much easier for me to reference, potentially send to players, though I think that I would prefer to just send them like a one-page, like infographic style, very visual based, vibes forward hook for it, rather than requiring them to read anything kind of like too in depth. But ultimately this could then be a product in the end, because that is something that I know that people asked for when I was building Ash. People asked for it when we were building the Dual Cities, but I did not start either of those projects with like infrastructure in mind. Whereas this time I'm like, right, okay, I know that I'm starting this and I know that people ask for it right from the start. So I'm going to start with the tools in place so that at least maybe this could be a thing that people could get, because a West Marches style region, like an isolated island, much more easy to like package up. So potentially in the future this could be a product, like very, very vague, like maybe on that. Absolutely not a definitely gonna happen, not even a maybe gonna happen, just a potentially could maybe happen. But it is a place to put all of the things as they develop. And I personally find that as I'm developing a place, if I think of it in the context of a source book, it helps me organize my thoughts. So I know that source books are organized in a specific way. So I know that they're going to present certain information in certain orders, and you expect certain things in a source book, which helps me when I'm developing a new place go, right, okay, what do I have that's missing in terms of the key pieces of information that I want to make sure that I can convey, either that I know or I can convey to the players. You know, like most source books will have like a broad history. Cool, so I know I need a broad history. Most of them will have a section that lists some of the key locations. Cool, so I know I need some of the key locations. Some of them might have like a random travel, like here's some random places that you'll find. Cool, so I can do that. And structuring it like that in my mind first can help to figure out what order to start building things out in, and figure out where you've missed options as you are building things out to face the players. I need to change my music and beverage because my mouth is so dry. So in terms of the key information that I know, dominant population, human, as is mostly the default in my world. Primary exports for Sunscar is going to be artifacts. That is the reason why people as a whole, why settlers have come back here, because they have heard tales of the Radiant Crown and the crashed Sky City and the ability to export out these artifacts. Danger level is going to be high. There will be magic for sale. There will be spellcasting and stuff available. And then a lot of the initial work that we'll be doing over the coming weeks will probably be a mix of like super high level conceptual stuff, and then focusing in on this kind of starting region around the tap. So I know that our safe town is going to be over here on the east coast, and part of that is if we go to our map of Ishtar again. So our starting town is going to be around here, which makes the most sense for getting to it from Talavar. So most of the people that the settlers here will have come from Talavar. Then in terms of the rest of the waters, to kind of disincentivize people just getting on a boat and circumventing a lot of the land-based travel, I do want the waters to be filled with monsters, like coastal monsters. If what I had in mind was the scenes from the latest Jurassic Park when they are assaulted by the mosasaur, and then also the spinosaurs that are kind of like chilling on the beach. This idea that there are coastal monsters that if a ship gets too near, it is just dangerous to go too near the coast, with the exception of kind of like one little bay, little section of this area that has either been made safe or is naturally safe. And from there you can strike out by land. What if the coasts are the migration paths of coastal monsters, so they can predict when the monsters will be there? Potentially, having some prediction of, oh, you can't get on a boat and bypass all of this until the summer or until 2 seasons from now, is one option. Another option is, one option is just be like, yes, players, you can get on a boat and go to the most dangerous part of the island. You will just die. And very quickly they'd learn what kind of campaign they're playing in. But, obviously you give them the warning up front. During your session 0, you establish the kind of campaign you're in. You're like, so West Marches style, the wilderness is dangerous. If you are not careful, things will stomp you. But it doesn't matter how many times you warn the players of danger, they will still just go blundering into it at every available opportunity. So I think that putting some level of guardrail to be like, you cannot get here yet. In terms of it feeling a bit too gamey, to say this area is a bit too dangerous, too high level, in a normal campaign, I would completely agree. But in this style of campaign where there's already so many variables of like multiple different group compositions and the schedule being all over the place, I think that I'm much more okay being like, you are at least soft gated from going to certain areas, because there's already a million different things that I'm having to track. I don't want to have to deal with the fact that you level 3s are going to go into an area that's really designed for level 15s. That might change as we go through it, but right now, broadly speaking, I'm thinking that this eastern little bit is going to be vaguely safe, and you can see some of my design thinking on display in that there's a fairly narrow choke point here that we can build some kind of natural pass or some narrative reason for the players to eventually be able to move through that, and then the world opens up. So maybe this kind of like narrow piece of land here is physically inaccessible when the campaign starts, and this area is the only one that they have to explore, which is still pretty large. It's like almost 200 miles top to bottom. That's like bigger than Wales. So it's not like they don't have a decent size area in which to explore to begin with. But then when they reach an appropriate level, for some reason they're able to move through this narrow pass that might be blocked for some reason, and then it opens up and they get the option to go up into the frozen tundras or down into the dangerous deserts. And that's when they can start hearing tales of, oh, really far east, or far west even, you might find the Deadlands and the horrible things there. Let me catch up with the chat. Marshall says, if they could travel by sea, what kind of quick travel is there by land? Caravans or something similar? Or are there pilgrimages that are safer to travel with on the land? So a lot of land-based travel in West Marches style campaigns typically is you only really venture as far as it is safe, because part of the concession of you're not playing with the same group every week is you have to get back to safety before the end of the session. Otherwise, your characters are just kind of stuck out in limbo until the next time this specific group can get together. And that's something that's going to need to be like sussed out for this specific like setup of players and situation, for how we're going to handle player groups and the whole like organization of players is something that I'm going to have to figure out, because I'm not 100% sure yet. I've not started approaching potential players to be like, I know that you've asked about me running D&D. Well, the time has come, because I want to make sure I've got a decent handle on the world that they're going to be playing in before I start approaching them. Karth says, my players just knocked out of a mission in my cyberpunkish game. They're investigating a man whose wife thought he was cheating. Turned out he was doing some industrial spy work. The cowards. I wish more players would flee more often. Like, too often they're like, we will not flee under any circumstances. And then just strings of dead characters. If only the east is inhabited, you could just say there's nowhere safe to dock a large ship. Sailing all the way there just to drop them on a small boat isn't worth it for any captain on its own. Yeah, that could be a really simple solution. Like, no captain's willing to go and risk it. If they want to go, they have to wait and get their own boat. That naturally builds in some leveling up. I feel like a faction would want to control the choke point for trade. Potentially, depends on what the choke point is. The choke point could be like a large mountain that has some passage through it that is locked. Because we're dealing with crashed skyship technology, we have quite a large scope for magical shenanigans to be able to like lock off areas and offer options to block out routes as well. So we could have, there is just a huge section of skyship crashed across this area, and there is literally a locked door that you can't get through until you find like the right authorization to get through it, and somewhere out in that first area there is, and it just so happens that they'll have to be like level 5 before they find that authorization, you know, that kind of thing. There's a bunch of options for this choke point, but I knew that if I put the choke point there, it gives us those options. Let's see what else we've got from people saying. What larger conflicts do you think are present in the landmass? What political forces are at play and influencing the meta of the continent? So I think that at the moment, I'm thinking it's going to be very traditional West Matches style. So the politics aspect will very much be backseat, and it will be much more of a go out and explore ancient places, find loot, fight monsters. Because the premise of this is that it's a large group of players who will not be consistent week to week. They will get together in various groups and come to me and say, right, this week players A, B, C, D want to play, but next week it might be B, C, F, and G that want to play together. So there will be no continuity of capital P plot between all of them. The story is the moment-to-moment gameplay and what they create in that moment-to-moment gameplay and the stories they tell each other. So having like political machinations is probably going to be something that doesn't come up a whole bunch. But that doesn't mean there can't be factions. And I think that having all of the players tied to a faction is a really easy starting point for why do all of your players keep going out together? And then having other factions come into that could play into it. Depends on where we go in the development of that. Dev Walker, welcome in. Excited to catch you live. I'm glad that you are here. Wild Wolf says, any plans for an incarnate map making stream? That is definitely something that I could do. We could do a stream solely focused on working on the map. It's not something, I don't think it's something that we have done before, done a full map based stream. So that is something that we could do relatively soon. I have no idea how well Incarnate will play with being streamed, but we can definitely try it. JNat says, it's the only way to pass west is through the skyship. At that point, you could make the east part a separate island and the ship is underwater. So going west on land is the only... going west on land only through the ship underwater. Possibly. I like the physical choke point rather than it being 2 islands. But that might change. All of this might change. Dev Hawkins says, is the new continent of Ishtar or a fully new setting? It is a new region of Ishtar. So if we jump into the world map, it is this little, again, it's not little, but this island to the west of Talabar. It is the region of Sunscar. And I'm still in the measuring distance mode. And it is going to be the home for a West Marches style game. Carl says, what system will be using for the campaign? It'll almost certainly be 5.5. So there'll be a number of my existing players that might want to play. They're already familiar with 5.5. And then in terms of the other people that want to play, a lot of them have never played before, and they come and they're like, we want to play D&D. And when someone comes to me and says, I want to play a D&D, I'm like, cool, I would love to get you playing new games eventually, but certainly I know that you're coming to me initially with a set of preconceptions about what you want to play, and the style of thing that you want to experience, and there's certain expectations that you have that I think that playing like official name brand D&D versus a fork or a clone or, you know, one of the offshoots, I think there's a lot of benefit to playing D&D, and I do just like it. Lexi says, would you say West March's style is something only an experienced DM should run? It sounds super complicated. I wouldn't say it needs to be a necessarily experienced GM. The complicated element of it is on the like logistic scheduling side. It's the real life element of it is more complicated than anything else. Like the actual running of it and the world building element, all of the GM side of it, I don't think is necessarily more complicated than a traditional campaign. Like you probably have to build out more of the world up front than you necessarily have to with a normal linear narrative campaign for a single set group of people. But as we know from all of these streams that I've been doing for the last several years, that is how I build out my settings anyway. I've always preferred to really front load my world building to save myself work and headaches in the future. So I've already been world building like it's been a West Marches campaign for years anyway. It's really just the logistics side of things of scheduling an even bigger group of people and then helping them to understand that you're not all going to be playing at the same time. You're not always going to be playing in the same groups. It's going to be a big mishmash of people all coming together for different quests at different times, and that aspect of it. JNat says, if you want them to pass through the ship, then the ship itself is the choke point. Maybe a faction already set camp in it. Maybe. Could be that it is controlled by someone that they have to parlay with. There's a whole bunch of options for how we handle that choke point. I don't want to get too cart before the horse in terms of how to figure out what to do with that choke point, other than I know that it exists. Dev says, would you have any form of overarching story in the form of a faction working towards a goal, and each session having that as a backdrop or drive? Think of Helldivers sort of analog. Maybe, but it would have to be so in the background and so non-plot critical, because the story is the players and the players are the story, and what they do in the moment-to-moment gameplay is really what the story is for them. A big part of the West Marches style is group one goes out to a place, and in that place they find something that is they can't bypass, they can't unlock, they can't defeat. Let's say they find a locked door that has a key in the shape of a skull, and they're like, oh, we went to this dungeon 2 hexes over and we found this door with a key in the shape of a skull. And then it's in speaking to the other players go, well, our group went to this dungeon 4 hexes south and we found a key with it in the shape of a skull. And it's all of that interconnected player discussion and activity, and then all of the like crisscrossing of the maps and being like, well, if we take this skull key that we found and go to that place that you found, we might find something cool. And then they go and do that, and they come back and they tell the group as a whole. And slowly over time, the map starts getting populated with information and cool stuff. And that's a big part of the driving force of the West Marches style. Wild Wolf says, do any of your players watch the videos and stream? Does that ruin your sessions? Yes, some of them do watch the videos and stream. Hopefully, no, it doesn't ruin the sessions. So usually, whenever we're going into like deep spoiler territory, I will give a warning. I will almost always warn Ollie, because he's almost always lurking in the background somewhere, to be like, this is going to be a thing that will spoil it for you, turn it off now. But because we're so early in the development of this, all of them could be here. There's no guarantee that all of them would take part in this West Marches style campaign anyway, because it might not be their bag. You know, this is going to be concurrent to my current campaign, not replacing it. So they might not want to play 2 campaigns, etc., etc. But we're so early in the process that nothing here is set in stone, other than maybe the name, and still the name might change. I am very fickle when it comes to names and really enjoy changing them. So we're not at the stage where I'm too worried about spoilers. And once we get further into it, then they'll start getting the caveats of, now's the time you can't watch anymore. And in videos, especially, like if I'm doing a Legend Keeper tutorial and going through my Legend Keeper, I will quite often have to blur elements because secrets pop up on the screen, and it might be pertinent to things that are coming up in the campaign, so I just blur it so the players can't see. So, I think that what I want to do is, I wish I'd kept the gridded version of this map so that I could see vaguely how dense I need to put ideas. But I know that to begin with, we're going to start in this kind of forest and plains level 1 to 4 or 5 area. And the player's going to start in this safe town. At the moment, we don't need to know any information about any of these things. What I do want to know is what kind of threats are present at that tier of play. So for that, we want to go to D&D Beyond, and we want to have a look at monsters. And this is the way that we built out a lot of early Jewel Cities of Talavar, is have a look for cool monsters that might be interesting to put on the map. So to do this, we're going to sort by monster manual, because I'm only interested in 5.5 monsters. I don't think there is a just general 5.5 tag in the thing anymore. There should be, given that they have officially split it off, but there is not. And we're going to put the CR as 1 to 5, and then we're going to just have a skim through and see whether there are any monsters that jump out to me as being the sort of thing that would be worthy of having a lair and being the kind of thing that it deserves to exist as a standalone thing on the map, as a fixed point where the players could be like, hey, did you hear that 3 hexes down there is the lair of a basilisk? Basilisk is just a great choice to begin with. So we're going to go, I'm almost certain we don't have a basilisk. No, we don't have a basilisk as an option. So a basilisk is a fantastic option for the kind of monster that should exist in the world with its own lair, because it is a classic D&D monster. A bone naga, I think, could be an option. It's something that hasn't come up a lot in previous campaigns. Could be a good option. A bullet is a great option. Displacer beasts, I think a pack of displacer beasts could be cool. Maybe. And a lot of the time, it's going to be what monsters are inside the dungeons that we're going to. But occasionally you do want to have kind of tentpole monsters where the whole thing is just fighting this one monster. And personally, I find that fighting a single monster much better in 5.5 than it was in 2014 5th edition, because as long as you get the kind of power level right, it's not so much a wash that the players can just steamroll over it, especially before the players start getting access to a lot of the kind of shutdown spells. A 1v party fight for the monsters can be super viable. Ghosts are a great option for just random things to have out in the world. So all of these kind of monsters are the sort of things that I would want to put in there. And I think that the way to start doing this is at first to just go with a monster lair as the first option. So not commit too hard to any one monster in a place, but to just be like, right, I know in this location there is a monster lair, and then at some point in the future me, future us can figure out what that is. So we go and make a new pin, monster lair, we link it to a new page called monster lair, we create a link, we click on it, and then we can change our template type, and we're going to change that to monster template, which will give us a little introduction section and some secrets. So if they get given a quest by someone, what the reward is, some descriptions and stuff, and then we go ahead and resync that with page, and it will give us our little monster lair icon, and then we can go ahead and make that our preferred colors and start adding them. So I think probably want like 5 or 6 monster lairs just on the map to begin with, just so we've got some option. So if we open up Sunscar on the left here and just start dragging in monster lairs just anywhere to begin with, and then start using those as frames of reference. So maybe we've got like a coastal one. I think this one, like a coastal one in like a little bay. Maybe this like deep bay ends in a cave system, and we could have a water-based monster lair. I think that for now we could take a monster lair and we could put it on the gap, on the choke point, and maybe the reason that you can't pass through into the next region of the world is because there's a chuffing great big monster there and it'll kill you. So the players have to be a high enough level to destroy the monster to be able to progress. I don't know whether that's what it will be in the final version, but certainly as a kind of in-universe explanation and like a diegetic reason, makes perfect sense. Then it's just a case of want to have a monster lair that's fairly close to the starting town, so that there's one that you can get to in a short enough amount of time. Want to have a couple that are spread out, and then from there it'll be a case of using these pins that we have in place and then start to expand those outwards and use the context of those to give us more ideas. Jaynat says, any volcanoes on the island? Volcanoes are always nice for some unique fiery monsters that won't just fit in the prairies or something. No volcanoes as of yet, because there are no mountains or any physical features really, but there could be a volcano. Who knows? At this point I have no idea if there is a volcano, but if there isn't a volcano, that's not to say we couldn't have some crack or chasm that leads to like a magma pit or something that could give volcano vibes and be a source of like lava or magma monsters. And then from here, a lot of the work then will be finding cool and evocative names for places. the kind of things that a player is going to hear in the tavern. Another adventurer going, oh, I just went to location X, and they go, location X? That sounds really cool. I want to go there. Mark it on my map, please. And that just comes down to finding cool names. And for that, we're going to jump into my Game Master Toolkit. So this is a spreadsheet that has a bunch of different generators and tools built into it. You can pick it up on my website if you sign up for my newsletter, and I have a button for that somewhere. The button is there. So if you sign up for my newsletter on my website, you get the GM Toolkit sent to you as soon as you sign up, and then every month I send out new monsters and other free stuff as well. But get this as soon as you sign up, and it's got a ton of generators and other options in it. So we are going to use, I think, the point of interest generator to begin with. So this is a generator that will give us a place name that is generated from 2 columns of words, so it will jam the words together. Then it will give us a location type, what the dominant citizen of that location is, what the featured monster type of it is, and what the nearby resource is. So you can use as much of this information as you want to create an evocative point of interest. So in our case, Dagger Nest. I don't like Dagger Nest, but Dagger's Nest, or the Nest of Daggers, something like that. A deserted way station, primarily occupied by humans, but the featured monster, so this could be monsters that are currently kind of assaulting this location, nearby this location, could be monsters that are in the location and have routed the dominant citizens. In this case, it would be beasts, and the nearby resource would be wood. So this gives us some context of like, what is this thing? What's around it? And that kind of stuff. So in this case, it would be Dagger's Nest, a deserted way station beset by beasts, and the nearby resource being wood means that it's probably going to be in a forest. So we are in a forest, and that would make sense. I don't particularly like Dagger's Nest for the name, so we're going to go ahead and reload the page and generate another one. And it will give us new names each time, different location types, different citizens, monsters, and nearby resources. So we're going to do that until we get something that speaks to me. And if we don't, then what I might do is jump over to the plot hook generator instead. Because this pulls from a list of 2 options and jams them together. The options are pretty extensive. It's like 200 options per column. But when you're going for a very specific vibe, it's not always the best idea. Like the Lamia jail, I don't think I would want that for a name, but a place where a Lamia has been imprisoned could be very cool. Idea, a long abandoned shrine, the rituals that once conducted on it lost to time. Read there are hints in nearby dungeons, ruins, or points of interest. Long abandoned shrines. I love long abandoned shrines. So if we go to the Jewel Cities, I have a bunch of shrines and standing stones of power and those kind of things in the Jewel Cities, and that might be an option actually, is to look at what like generic locations I have in the Jewel Cities and just port some over, because we've got a bunch of different altars and shrines and men here which are standing stones of power in the Jewel Cities that might work for porting over to Sunscar for like the general ideas for them. Long abandoned shrines are great for West Marches games because instead of the keys, you're looking for instructions of what to do in what order. Very different type of puzzle. Exactly. Like anything that's been lost to time is the general vibe we want for this campaign setting, because we want to encourage exploration, and we also always thinking of the fact that it's the exploration and the combat that's the driving force for everything versus capital P plot. So I think that it might be an idea to just look through some of the list, and instead of like generating some, I'll give it another generator because I can't help myself. I love a good generator, like Ogre's Prison, a prison of ogres. I love it. But things like citadels and all of that kind of stuff, all good stuff. But let's have a look at the plot generator and have a look. The generator does love prisons. So this plot hook generator, the ideal kind of thing to use when the players are in periods of travel, or you need an random either encounter or idea for your adventure for that session. So for example, you come across a group of poachers trying to illegally hunt the endangered animals that live here. Wouldn't be necessarily applicable for our setting because there wouldn't be endangered animals necessarily in a frontier, but you meet a wizard who claims to be a clone and insists their counterpart is evil and trying to kill them. There is no setting where I wouldn't want to have that happen to me as a player, and would love for that to happen and be like, yes, I don't care how this resolves, but I want to see it through to the end. I think that a big part of the draw in the West Marches is very much the names of the places. So it might be a case of we might have to have a dedicated session that is just like working on a new evocative place name generating name convention, because I feel like I had an evocative place name generator at some point, but it may have been lost to the sands of time. Let's have a look and see whether it exists. Where would it be? Would be in my GM master book and in evocative place name, but there, yeah. Straight away, I get the Bleeding Shrine, which is much more evocative and way cooler. So I think that it is all of these should be in the one that we have in the GM toolkit. I think the GM toolkit just isn't being my friend today. Point of interest generator. Do you use Legend Keeper inside a browser or in a separate desktop app? Inside the browser. I don't believe there currently is a desktop app for it. I think it is something that is oft requested and might be on the radar and kind of thing for them to do in the future. But at the moment it is only browser based, or the way that you can save a web page as an app, but it really is just the browser. That's how Incarnate's desktop app is. They've got a desktop app now that is just the browser window, and it does run faster. I've done tests and it is less resource intensive because it's got all of the browser stuff stripped out of it, but it's not true app. So here we go, Twisted Ziggurat, much more evocative and the kind of thing that I would expect to find in the desert region. The only problem with running the toolkit through the web browsers, I've got to physically refresh it every single time, whereas when it's in Excel, I can button refresh it. The Queen's Gallows. Fronic says, I think LK will lean towards a developer API will open up using LK together with Obsidian. Maybe. I feel like the API question has come up a whole bunch, and at least on my memory, I don't think I've ever seen a super strong yes, let's do API stuff. But I don't know. I feel like I'm always half a step behind when it comes to Legend Keeper releases. I'll put out a Legend Keeper video and inevitably 2 days later Braden will release a new feature on Legend Keeper, and I'm like, God damn it, Braden, I just released a video, could you not have given me a heads up? It's happened with the last two big releases. I film a little video, put it out, and then bam, new feature. And I'm like, God damn it, now I've got to film again. But it's all good. I think that we might be better served finding a specific like grimdark or OSR style generator and finding some names. The Shadow Dark books might have them. That could be a good place to start looking for some for that style of naming convention. Because a lot of it is going to be the kind of first steps. It's going to be refine the map, then get evocative names to plaster all over the map, then figure out what is actually in those locations. And it'll be a case of working in stages and waves and going back and forth and refining and tweaking the whole time. And every time something gets like locked in, so to speak, like a decision is made that like, right, okay, now officially in the lore of this place, here is how this thing works. Then we go into the, where are we? It's not working. Trying to turn on the page that is for the thing. It's not working. I was trying to bring up Affinity to be like, and then we go back into the Affinity document and update it there, but Affinity's not playing with Obsidian, so you just have to imagine it's there. And back and forth over a period of weeks and months, just like we've done with previous campaigns. If you have any questions about the setting, about the West Marches style in general, about the wider setting of Ishtar itself, if we jump back out into all the Jewel Cities, my current campaign setting, go ahead and throw them into the chat while I rejuvenate myself with a beverage. What time are we on? We are on almost 8:30. We'll go for like maybe 10-15 more minutes, because I don't think I have the brain power to come up with super evocative new ideas this evening. But we can do a little bit more Q&A, and I always have brain power to talk about the things that already exist. Product says, what made you decide to do a West Marches style? So for years, I've been running the same group of people in campaigns in Ishtar, the world that my games are set in, for pretty much a decade now. And for most of that time, other people in our friend group have been like, I would really like to play D&D. Will you run D&D for me? Can I play? And there is a larger group of people that want to play than I have the capacity to run in that game, in that ongoing campaign. And I'm also very hesitant to bring new people into that ongoing campaign now, because it's the same group that has been together for like a decade. There's so much assumed knowledge and like interpersonal references that they have now about the world and about the experiences that they've had together. Anyone that would be brought in would be like very outsidery, and I don't want that. So over the last several weeks, I've had like 5 or 6 people separately be like, you're the D&D guy, D&D for me. And it's something that I've been thinking about for a long time, running a more West Marches style game to bring in all of these people that I know would like to play but might not be able to commit to weekly play, or aren't sure whether they actually would like it but just want to try it, and all of those kind of things. So after a condensed amount of people asking me in a very short period of time, I decided that, yeah, I really do need to make a setting specifically for this, because I'll never start it otherwise. And then I can start running people through it. Wildwolf says, what lore bit, location, or character are you the most proud of? Oh, that's a real good question. Damn. In terms of the lore, I think probably all of the stuff surrounding the Akmiri, it's the stuff that my players consistently like bite onto the most. So over the last decade, the players, anytime they come across anything relating to the Akmiri, even if their characters don't necessarily care about it in the moment, they as players are always interested in exploring what the situation has brought up, because they know it's going to be weird and wonderful and wacky, and there's going to be strange stuff, and they always are excited to at least see what it's all about, even if their characters don't care about it, even if they as players don't care about the result of it. They are always eager to kind of like bite on it and see what becomes of it, which is really nice. In terms of location, there will be a location. It is not coming to me immediately. Probably the Shattered Isles. So Valeroth, which is one of the nations of Valen, which is the eastern continent, was the location of my first campaign, and that campaign ended with the players inadvertently blowing the country up that they were trying to protect, and it became the Shattered Isles. They like detonated this huge magical bomb, and it went like Namek from Dragon Ball Z, and just the whole country blew up. And every time I see that location on the map, it makes me smile, because I'm like, you people did that. You should have said, you were trying to save this place and you blew it up, and it always makes me chuckle. And then character-wise, whom I'm most proud of is definitely the unintended big bad of our very first campaign, who was a shopkeeper called Van Vinder, who in their very first interaction, the players were like, this guy's evil. Because for some reason, when they went to speak to him, I gave him a very stereotypical Romanian accent, and they were like, he's a vampire, he's evil. He wasn't a vampire. He wasn't evil when they met him, but then he ended up being super evil, like potentially one of the most evil and powerful creatures in the cosmos. And he became like the background villain across the entire campaign. And then once they'd beat the actual big bad, we had a whole post-campaign arc in like level 19 and 20 where he was the villain, and that was a lot of fun. Lexi says, can't commit to weekly play. Slackers. Exactly. All right. Although, saying that, I do feel terrible, because most of the cancellations in this campaign have been because of me. Because of not being well enough to play every week. Like, up until this campaign, I've managed to pretty rigorously been like, play every week for almost 10 years, solidly. And then just my body betraying me. It's not good enough. But that is one of the nice things about the West Marches style, is it's going to be way easier to be like, hey, I can play on these days, and then they can get themselves together in a group and come and play, which is going to be real nice. Chronically Ill, high five. Yeah. And I think that it'll be a nice way to introduce new people to the game, introduce new people to the world and the setting, kind of also be... This is not something that I was thinking about when I decided on the West Marches style, or decided on like doing this as a campaign. It's something that's just occurring to me now. But it'll also be a soft, like almost like interview, like a way to interview people and be like, if someone's like, oh, I'm really interested in playing D&D, like, cool, I run a West Marches game. You can come play a few sessions. You can get a vibe for them as a player, see if they get along with other people in the group, see how they settle into the group dynamic. And it might be a way to give people a foot into the door of the Ishtar setting, and then maybe eventually be able to bring people into the long-term game, because they will have some assumed knowledge then, and it won't feel like they're starting from nothing in the group with the rest of the people, and actually be able to have more people in that long-term game as well. So that could be an unintended side effect, consequence, benefit of doing this, which is really nice. That wasn't something that I'd thought about until right now, but could be a nice benefit. So when the players are like, you're doing this to replace us, cry. Now I can be like, if anything, it just means that we can play more in the long-term game, because now we have a bigger pool of people to potentially bring in once they're like established and have got an idea of what this game is and what this world is. That went down the wrong hole. Oh my days. So yeah, in terms of Sunscar, it's impossible not to pronounce it like that. Give it the real sword and sorcery treatment. What I am envisioning is very much a Horizon style. When I think of the players going out into that world, I think of towering Akmiri structures buried in the earth from their crash landing, overgrown with the forest and the vegetation and the world, overgrown or crumbling in ruins, very much a retaken by nature. And part of the allure is figuring out what happened to all of these places and structures and the Akmiri, and for the players for whom that is an interest, this is a nice campaign to be like, you've never been able to dive into this in our previous campaigns because it's never been at the forefront, but now you're going to be in an explicitly like Akmiri coded setting that's steeped in history, that you can go, and anything that you do in it, you'll also have like a secondary background kind of drive to go and figure out more about this cataclysm and these people and figure out the deep lore of the world. But you don't have to do that, but for people that want to, there'll be a lot there to bite onto. And then also just for the players who love the exploration side of the game, who love to go to a weird place filled with weird stuff and figure out what the deal is. I think that this will be an ideal campaign for that, because there'll be a bunch of real weird and wacky stuff. And I think that we're going to get a lot of use out of the new weird monster builder that we've been making over the last couple of weeks in stream as well, which generates a weird and wacky monster based on your CR requirements. So let's say our players are CR3 and they head out into the world and they discovered a ruined and crumbling tower, inside which is a spectral dragon. Cool. Why is there a spectral dragon? What is it? It has the ephemeral action, it can bonus action a spell, it can parry, but then in terms of its mutations, so this generator gives you the stats for a creature, you define its CR, and then it will generate a set of stats based on the median value for that CR in the monster manual for 5.5. So it gives you the AC, the HP, all that good stuff. It tells you whether it's resistant to any damage or magic, all that kind of stuff. It is resistant to damage, but I don't know where the damage types have gone. That damage type should be populated. But then it also gets mutations. So it might have a mouth in its stomach, or tentacles instead of legs, or a chitinous shell. One or more of those options. And then anytime you refresh, it should refresh all of the options. So let's do it again. Yes, it does. So a chitinous shell, tentacles erupting from its back. It's a thorned beast. So this time they go to a different place. It's a CR3 thorned beast that has arcana for its treasure. It has a mouth in its back or tentacles erupting from its back. Either one, whichever one you think is coolest. And then maybe it can Misty Step as a bonus action, or one of those options. I think we'll get a lot of use out of this random monster generator for making weird and wacky monsters filled with magic that have imbibed some of the magic of the world that they are in, because this is a place where the Sky City has crashed to the ground, and that was an incredibly magical location filled with magic. It's crashed to the ground. That magic is leached into the earth and the surrounding region, and there will be creatures that have taken that on and become changed as a result. So having really weird monsters, excuse me, is going to make a lot of sense. So I think that about sums up where I'm at in terms of high-level thoughts for this and where I've gotten up to so far. Like I said, this has existed in concept for about 24 hours. So we have not a lot existing right now and a long way to go. I think that doing a map stream could be really fun. We might try that next weekend, fire up Incarnate and see what we can do in terms of the map itself, and then go from there, develop out this world, figure out what the places are, who the people are, and slowly build it to the point where it is ready to have players in front of it. So any questions before we end, throw them in the chat. I'm going to do my end of stream spiel. I am going to remind you folks that there is still 3 days left of my Kickstarter for the cheat sheets for 5.5e. I'll throw a link to that into the description below. Let's give it a refresh, see if we are any closer than we were. We are not, but that is fine. We're less than $100 from the last stretch goal, which is going to be a super beginner friendly what is the word, adventure. You can tell that it's getting to the end of the stream because my brain is starting to turn off. A super beginner friendly adventure that is designed to be run without any prep and designed to be really, really beginner friendly. That's going to be the last stretch goal for this. Super excited for that. Other things in terms of buttons for me to press and things for me to let you know about. At the bottom of the screen here, you can see the thing talking about channel memberships. My brain is really switching off. It has fully switched off. If you want to help support the channel even more, you can pick up a channel membership. The button to join is somewhere down below. Channel members get access to a bunch of extra videos. They're going to get access to a video in like 3 days. Wednesday this week, the next video that channel members are getting access to is a video all about fallen empires, and I'm going to be going into a whole heap of depth about the Akmiri and talking about fallen empires in the context of the Akmiri and talking about how to use fallen empires in your game. This was before I filmed this, before I'd even like settled on doing Sunscar and the West Marches. Just a big old coincidence. But if the stuff that we've spoken about the Akmiri this evening tickles your fancy and you're like, that sounds kind of cool, there's going to be a whole members video about them and using them as an example for world building fallen empires coming on Wednesday. And there's a whole bunch of specific members only videos already on the channel. I try and alternate a week of public video, a week of members only videos, so there's always something for everyone. There is also a Discord where you can join and chat with a bunch of other folks who are into TTRPGs, float your latest schemes to torment your players or lament your latest character loss. It's a great place to hang out. The link is there. And I think that pretty much covers all of the buttons that I need to press for this evening. Yeah, covers all of the buttons. My brain is turning to mush, so I am gonna close out before I keel over. My name has been Anto. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope that you will return. The intention is to do this again next Sunday. I'm trying to get back into the swing of doing this every Sunday evening, usually between 7 and 9-ish p.m. UK time, health notwithstanding. But if you enjoy world building and enjoy seeing this kind of deep dive process of building out worlds and developing settings and seeing kind of some of the designer brain behind the scenes, hit subscribe, do come back. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. But until then, happy gaming. Where are my buttons?